Today and Across the Fence, it's our monthly Bird Notes program. We'll talk about some of the early migrants moving through Vermont right now. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson, and as always on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. Great to see you again.
As always, great to be here.
It seems a little early to be talking about migration.
You know, it is when you think about it, except for one group of birds which birders get excited about this time of year, primarily in August. In fact, we're getting on here at the end of August towards the tail end of their migration, and these are our shorebirds. Our sandpipers and plovers. They have a very short window. Many of them breed very far north, many up in the Arctic or northern Canada. Because of that, they have a brief window where they can actually, raise young and get off, and then they're on their way south. Some of them traveling all the way down to South America, others traveling to southern U.S. and the coastal areas there. But what ends up happening is these birds tend to be the first ones that we see pushing through.
Okay.
There are a lot of other birds, obviously, that are beginning to think about migration. There's people that are seeing clusters of warblers and other small songbirds that are beginning to do what we call post-breeding dispersal. But today we're going to talk a little bit about these sandpipers and they're birds that we don't necessarily associate with Vermont here.
Right. So what are we seeing?
Well, it's one of those things that this year we had very high water early on Lake Champlain, and that water has gone down and exposed some areas. But normally this time of year, in fact, last year we had really low water.
Right.
And so that exposes these mud flats or feeding areas for these birds. This first bird we're going to talk about falls into the category of what we call the peeps. These are these small little shorebirds. This bird is a least sandpiper, and they're these small little, that when you see them off in the distance, they're very difficult to identify. Even up close with a pair of binoculars, they are difficult to identify. This guy, I always think of, I look at those legs, and the least sandpiper has yellow legs, which the way in my brain works is least in color. Then the next bird we're going to see here, which is the semi-palmated sandpiper. Okay, again, the same size, a little different coloration on the back, but you can see the semi-palmated sandpiper has those darker legs. Now, when I've talked with folks, other birders, they often say, well, you can use that, but if you've got a least sandpiper walking through a muddy area,
you can't see the legs.
Or their legs get dark from the mud. So, sometimes there's other clues this time of year. These birds are going through different molt patterns, and so getting up close and distinguishing them is a challenge for a lot of birders.
Yeah, good luck.
And they take right to it. We've been getting reports all over the place. The other challenge this year has been that, again, since the water hasn't really dropped that far down, people have been seeing them in kind of strange places. They're over in Heinsberg, there were a couple puddles in the field, and people were seeing, birders were going there, picking up these birds, seeing them in that one puddle. They've been seeing them reported in farm field ponds, that have gone down a little bit. And actually now at Dead Creek Wildlife Management Area, at the Brillier Access, people are beginning to see the birds there. But they haven't been showing up in great numbers in any particular place, primarily because water levels are still pretty high, and we don't get those exposed mud flats.
Interesting.
So, we talk about these small birds. They're difficult to see.
Right.
Let's bump up to a little bit of a larger bird, but not necessarily any easier to discern the two. This is the Yesser Yellowlegs. You can see it gets its name from those nice bright yellow legs. It's a taller bird, has longer legs, is quite a bit bigger than our least and our semi-palmated sandpipers. And this bird, we separate from the next bird we're going to look at by the length of its bill and its size. So this is the greater Yellowlegs. So again, very similar in nature. To see these birds, it's often great to see them together.
Yeah, so you can tell, obviously.
Right. You can see the ones a little bit smaller, shorter bill. But when they're out there by themselves, again, you have to take that time to you know, to just figure it out and use all those little diagnostic clues that birders are really good at. That's why they're, you know.
That's what they do.
Shorebirders are a great crew, and, you know, when they find a little puddle of shorebirds, you know, we'll get report day after day from different people that visited that puddle over in Heinsberg to see what was there.
And so you have some more interesting sightings?
Yeah, you know, again, when these things are flying through and you have a flock of peeps, of semi-palmateds or least sandpipers, you know, you can sit there and you can scan them and say, oh, we got 25 peeps. But again, folks will sit down and they'll go through those individual 25 and they can come up with other birds. So there have been some good birds that have been seen. One's a stilt sandpiper, and this is a picture of a stilt sandpiper down at Brullier Access. This is at Dead Creek. This Ian Worley was the one. He's been out there looking at all these, and he records all this stuff on eBird. A little bit bigger bird. Again, you know, there's some clues there. The pectoral sandpiper, and the reason they call this the pectoral sandpiper is you see that distinct line on its belly.
Right.
And so that's an indicator and clue that gives this bird its name and separates it from other birds. You know, again, these birds are all in the same size category, so you need these fine things. And then the next bird we're going to see, this one has a nice clue in it, in that it has that white eye ring. And this is the solitary sandpiper, oftentimes seen in flocks, but oftentimes seen by itself as well. Again, so these are birds that they're all up north for the most part. They move through rather quickly, usually in August, and then they're gone. There are a couple birds that do breed here during the summer. One is familiar to most folks. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yes.
The killdeer.
And you usually hear it before you see it.
Right, right. And it's known for nesting in driveways and
gravel.
Like they like that gravel ground. It's got those two black stripes. It makes that real distinctive call when it flies around. And it also does that broken wing display thing, which people often see.
Like to get you away from wherever the nest is.
Wherever the nest or the chicks is. So that's a very common bird, and you can, you know it's there not only visually, but by the way it makes its call. The next one is another bird which people probably don't see as much, but they do often hear them, and that's the common snipe. And the common snipe is, it's got that nice long bill, but the thing about this bird is that the tail on it, when it goes and it flies around very high up in the sound, air rushes over the outer rectuses or the outer tail feathers, and it makes what's called a winnowing sound, where it kind of goes whoop, 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 whoop,
oh yeah, whoop, whoop. I've heard that.
Yeah, so way up high in the air, you're looking around, you can't find this bird, but you can hear this odd sound. That's the snipe in action.
Interesting.
And these are both birds that breed here in Vermont, shorebirds that breed here in Vermont. There's a couple other ones, upland sandpipers and things of that nature. Actually, upland sandpipers are endangered. They don't breed here much anymore. But those are two real common ones that folks would come across during the summer months, as well as during migration.
What other birds are migrating now?
Well, another big one, and this is one, again, looking at what's coming across on the listserv, and I haven't seen them myself, but there's a committed group of folks down around Westminster on the, down on the Connecticut River, and they're looking for nighthawks. And so they're providing us with a nightly count of nighthawks as they fly by. The common nighthawk is very distinctive with that wing pattern. They've been seeing anywhere from 50 to 100 birds. Recently, numbers have dropped a little bit low. This bird has actually been recently added here in Vermont to the endangered and threatened species list.
Oh, okay.
The numbers of breeding birds have declined rapidly here in the state, along with another bird. These birds are called goat suckers. They have really big mouths, and they fly, they feed on the wing. The other one is the eastern whippoorwill, which I've gotten a couple letters where people have said, where are all the whippoorwills? And these are birds that we just don't see anymore for whatever reason. Along with, unfortunately, our swallows, which seem to be declining.
Yeah. That's true. I didn't get any barn swallows this year.
Yeah. So, and they're insect feeders, fly on the wing, and so they're trying to put some things together as to what might be causing that particular decline.
So now I know you brought some pictures and letters from our viewers.
I did. This first one is from Al Frey of Williston. and he gave us a nice shot of a Phoebe at its nest. I've been seeing Phoebes around my garden. They're in there picking off all the bugs that are, trying to pollinate my vegetables, but a very common bird that we see all over the place. Very noisy bird. I recently had some folks ask me, what's that bird that is constantly go, and Phoebes can be a little bit loud and persistent.
Yeah, it's hard to miss them. And you also have a question from Frank from Derby.
I do. And Frank says he wants to know if bluebirds will raise more than one brood a summer. And they will. Bluebirds will actually do a second brood. I've had calls from folks that have lost their first set of bluebirds, and oftentimes the bluebirds will come back in. You have bluebirds at your house.
Well, I thought we did. We usually do, but they were in the nest, and then they were out of the box, and then some tree swallows moved in.
Oh, right.
So I haven't seen the bluebirds as much.
Yeah. We had a couple of bluebirds on the center, and we had some funny things going on with ours. Frank also asked whether another bird will lay and build a nest on top of the bluebird nest. He had a set of bluebirds that were nesting, and then I think the same thing happened. It was tree swallows that actually came in, and they put their nest on top of, right on top of the young bluebirds. So whether the bluebirds abandoned, we think one of our nests actually did that at the center, that the birds we just didn't see them around after a while, and we knew they had chicks. So that will happen as well.
Is there anything that you can do to prevent that from happening?
Not really.
Yeah,
not really.
nature.
I mean, unfortunately, with bluebirds, they often recommend that you put 2 boxes together. Tree swallows will use one, and they'll defend that area, which will allow the bluebirds to use the other. So that's one strategy. Usually bluebirds are pretty aggressive. Tree swallows can be aggressive too. The big bad nasties are starlings and house sparrows. Yeah. Because they can really do a lot of damage for bluebirds. But unfortunately, maybe we had more bluebirds on our property because unfortunately we didn't have any tree swallows on our property this year. And if that population, the tree swallows, continue to go down, we may maybe see an increase in bluebirds because there'll be more nesting potential.
A house wren. I know we have a house wren at my house.
Right.
Loud, especially if you get close to the nest.
Yes.
But I noticed they fly back and forth in and out of the woodpile.
They are
like inside the woodpile.
Right, and wrens are like that. Winter wrens, which is another bird that we have here in the state, they can be very secretive. They can be loud, certainly. Winter wrens have a very long, extended song, but they like to be low and they like to be secretive and tuck down into those wood piles. House wrens will actually use small sticks for nest building. So if you open up a bluebird box and you see a whole bunch of sticks in there, that's usually a house wren. But they're not ones to sit up on the box and sing away. They'll sing from some secretive spot. Right. And a wood pile is a great way to do that.
Excellent.
Now, you said you thought you had some hawks in your backyard.
Well, they're hawks, but I'm not sure what kind of hawks. So I've got to do some research on that because you were telling me that the environment would suggest not a peregrine falcon, which is what I thought at first because they're not that big, but there's no nesting cliffs where I live.
Right.
So it would have to be a hawk that is in the woods.
Right. And that pretty much leads you to the 2 woodland hawks, which are sharp-shinned hawks or Cooper's hawk. And they will often, they are birds that we featured here before on the show, and they will often move through the woods, long tail, short wings, can maneuver, and they'll be birds that'll come in after other birds. You said that something about some juncos or something like that.
Well, when this winter, some juncos got caught in the fencing that we had up, and the hawk was there having lunch. Right.
So they'll do that. So yeah, probably that's what it is.
Okay.
We talk about migration. Talked a little bit about shorebird migration today. We're now at the end of August into September. We're going to be beginning to see movements of our warblers, and in future shows we'll probably feature not only some of these warbler species, small songbirds that are moving through, but we'll also feature some of the hawks that are moving through. We've done shows on them before. September through October are big hawk migration months. They're great places in the state to go and sit on a mountain, Mount Philo, and watch the hawks go by. We'll be talking about that in a future episode.
Excellent. Well, if you have a bird-related question, you can pass it along to Mark. You can contact him at 434-3068, or you can write to him at 255 Sherman Hollow Road, Huntington, Vermont, 05462. Or if you prefer, you can contact Mark by email. His address is mlabarr@audubon.org. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.